All right, let's dive in. Today's deep dive tackles a huge question. What is life?
Big one, for sure. We'll be exploring how philosophers through time have answered that very question.
Yeah, we've got a pretty impressive stack of sources here. From ancient texts all the way to modern essays, I'm already kind of blown away by all the different points of view. We're talking big names like Socrates, Dostoevsky, Gandhi. How do we even begin to unpack all of this?
Well, I think the best approach is to really focus on how these different philosophies can give us some insight into our own lives. It's not really about like memorizing names and dates.
Right, it's more about those light bulb moments, those ideas that just click with you.
That's it. So let's kick things off in ancient Greece, where philosophy, really got going.
Sounds good. Ancient Greece, here we come.
Socrates, for example, was all about self-examination. He actually believed that if you weren't examining your life, it wasn't worth living.
Whoa, that's pretty intense. It makes you wonder how much time we actually spend thinking about what we value, what our goals are, why we do the things we do.
Yeah, it's so easy to just get swept up in the daily grind. But Socrates would definitely argue that taking the time to really look inward, that's like crucial to a fulfilling life.
Makes you wonder if maybe we've lost sight of that a little in our crazy, fast-paced world. Okay, so Socrates is all about introspection. What about his student, Aristotle? What was his take?
Aristotle, he was all about reason and knowledge. He truly believed that those were the keys to understanding the world and our place in it. He really emphasized logic, observation, and the pursuit of truth.
So Socrates is like know yourself, and Aristotle is more like know the world.
You could put it that way, yeah.
Yeah.
For Aristotle, knowledge was power, like literally.
Yeah.
He thought it was the power to make better choices, to live a virtuous life, and to really contribute to society.
It sounds like a pretty serious approach to life. Did all the ancient Greeks take themselves this seriously?
Not necessarily. Epicurus, no, he had a totally different view. He believed that pleasure was the ultimate good, and that we should aim for a life free from pain and anxiety.
Okay, that's a philosophy I can get behind.
Hold on. It wasn't about just indulging in whatever you wanted. He actually believed in moderation and finding pleasure in simple things, like friendship, good conversation, or appreciating beauty.
So it's about quality over quantity when it comes to pleasure. That actually makes a lot of sense. So we've got these two really contrasting viewpoints from the same era, Socrates telling us to examine our souls and Epicurus reminding us to enjoy the good stuff.
Exactly. And that really highlights the diversity of thought we'll come across in this deep dive. There isn't one right answer to what life is. It's really about exploring these ideas and seeing what clicks with you.
Like a philosophical buffet. Speaking of different flavors, what about Eastern philosophies? Did they have similar ideas about life?
Oh, absolutely. Laozi, the founder of Taoism, he believed in living in harmony with nature, with the Tao, which is like the natural order of the universe.
So it's less about overthinking and more about going with the flow.
You can say that. Yeah. Laozi was big on simplicity, humility, and living in sync with the rhythms of nature. He really believed that by aligning ourselves with the Tao, that's how we find true peace and fulfillment.
It's interesting to compare that with, the Greek emphasis on reason and logic. It's like two completely different ways of approaching life.
And that's what makes this whole exploration so fascinating. By looking at these different approaches, we really get a much richer understanding of all the possibilities out there for us.
So we've gone from ancient Greece all the way to ancient China, exploring some really different philosophies of life. Where to next?
Well, let's fast forward a bit. We'll jump ahead a few centuries and look at some more modern ideas, existentialism.
Existentialism, huh? That sounds kind of heavy. What's the main gist of that?
Existentialists, they really wrestled with this idea that, life doesn't actually have any inherent meaning or purpose. We're just kind of thrown into the world, no set path or anything. So we have to create our own meaning.
So it's like being tossed into this massive playground with zero instructions. I guess that could be freeing, but also kind of scary.
Exactly. That feeling, that mix of freedom and anxiety, that's the heart of existentialism. One of the most famous existentialist thinkers was Dostoevsky, a Russian novelist. He really dove deep into human suffering and the whole search for meaning thing.
Dostoevsky, wasn't he the one who wrote Crime and Punishment? Yeah, that was a pretty dark book.
Yeah, Dostoevsky's work is definitely known for being psychologically intense and exploring those tough moral questions. He believed that life was this constant struggle against our own, inner darkness, and that true freedom came from facing our flaws embracing the imperfections.
So it's not about pretending everything's all sunshine and rainbows. It's about like acknowledging the dark stuff and then finding meaning despite it.
You got it. Dostoevsky's work really suggests that true meaning isn't something we just find out there in the world, it's something we create. Through our choices, through our actions, even when things are tough.
It really makes you think about how much we try to avoid pain and discomfort, but maybe those experiences are like actually crucial to growing, to finding meaning.
That's a really important insight from existentialism. Now, let's contrast Dostoevsky's kind of, bleak view with another big thinker, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Nietzsche. Wasn't he the God is dead guy? What was his take on life?
Nietzsche. He's often misunderstood. He was critical of, traditional morality and religion, not because he was nihilistic or anything, but because he thought we needed to create our own values, strive for self-improvement. He called this the will to power.
Will to power? Sounds intense. What did he actually mean by that?
It wasn't about, bossing other people around. It was more about pushing your own limits, embracing challenges, and becoming like the best version of yourself. Think of a time you set a tough goal for yourself and you crushed it. That's like the will to power in action.
So it's more about aiming for excellence, for personal growth, for pushing past what we think we can do?
Exactly. Nietzsche believed that we should constantly be challenging ourselves and overcoming our limitations. He saw life as a process of constantly becoming, evolving, striving for something greater.
It's interesting that both Dostoevsky and Nietzsche, even though they had pretty different approaches, they both emphasized taking responsibility for our own lives, creating our own meaning.
That's right. They both challenged us to face the absurdity of existence and, carve our own path. Now, let's move on to a thinker who had a slightly less optimistic perspective, Arthur Schopenhauer.
Schopenhauer, wasn't he known for being a bit of a pessimist? What did he have to say about all this?
Schopenhauer believed that life was just inherently full of suffering. He saw human desire as the root of all our problems, leading to this endless cycle of wanting and never being truly satisfied.
So we're all just stuck on this hedonic treadmill, always chasing after things that won't actually make us happy. That's kind of a bummer.
Well, Schopenhauer's philosophy can be tough to swallow, yeah. But he did offer some insights into, how to cope with all this inherent suffering. He thought we could find moments of peace and quiet through things like art, music, contemplation.
So it's about finding beauty and meaning amidst the struggle, like finding that silver lining in a dark cloud.
Good way to put it. Schopenhauer, even though he was a pessimist, he wasn't saying we should just give up. He believed that if we could really recognize the nature of suffering, we could find ways to, transcend it and experience real joy and fulfillment.
It's pretty amazing how all these existentialists, even though they acknowledge the hard parts of existence, they also point toward ways of finding meaning and purpose. It's like they're saying, yeah, life is tough, but here's how to make the most of it.
And that's a really powerful message, right? We're not just victims of circumstance. We can choose how we react to the challenges we face and create meaning in a world that might seem meaningless.
It's a good reminder that we have more control than we think. Now, so far, we've mostly focused on individuals and their perspectives, but how do things like societal forces and structures shape our understanding of life?
That's a crucial question, and it's one that Karl Marx, a 19th century philosopher and economist, spent a lot of time thinking about. Marx really believed that our lives are deeply shaped by the economic and social systems we live in.
So it's not just about our own choices and beliefs, but also about the bigger picture that affects our opportunities and our experiences.
Exactly. Marx argued that capitalism, with its focus on, private property and profit, creates class divisions and exploitation. And those have a huge impact on how we live and experience the world.
So, the economic system we're in can actually affect what we think is possible, what we value, even what it means to live a good life.
That was Marx's main point. He believed that true freedom and fulfillment could only come about in a more just and fair society.
It makes you realize how much of our lives are shaped by forces that are, hidden or that we just take for granted.
That's why it's so important to be aware of those forces and how they influence us. It's not about reducing everything down to economics, but about understanding how the social and economic context, shapes what we can do and what's holding us back.
It's like seeing the world through a brand new lens. Okay, so we've explored the dark side of existentialism and Marx's critique of society. But there's got to be more to life than just struggle and conflict, right? What about things like creativity and spirituality? Where do those fit in?
Those are essential parts of being human, for sure. We can explore those through the perspectives of two really iconic figures, Pablo Picasso and Mahatma Gandhi.
Picasso, the painter,
Yeah.
and Gandhi, the peace activist. What could they possibly have to say about the meaning of life?
Well, Picasso, he was this revolutionary artist, and he saw life as a canvas, a place to express our passions and our imaginations. He really believed in the power of creativity to, shape our reality and make the world a more beautiful and vibrant place.
So it's not just about observing the world, it's about actively creating and shaping it through our art, our ideas, the things we do.
That's a big takeaway from Picasso, yeah.
Yeah.
He reminds us that we're not just passive bystanders in life, but active participants. We can all contribute our own unique talents and perspectives.
It makes you think about how often we put limits on ourselves, we think, oh, I'm not creative. But really, we all have the potential to create something meaningful, whether it's a painting, a song, starting a business, or even just a new way of thinking.
Absolutely. And then we have Gandhi, who saw life as this journey toward spiritual enlightenment. He thought the way to get there was through love, nonviolence, and selfless service.
Gandhi's philosophy is so inspiring. It's all about connecting with something bigger than ourselves and using our lives to make a real difference in the world.
That's the heart of it. Gandhi's example teaches us that true power doesn't come from, dominating or controlling others. It comes from compassion, from understanding, and from fighting for justice and equality peacefully.
It's a good reminder that our lives can be a force for good in the world. We've covered a lot of ground here, from ancient philosophers to modern artists and activists. It's incredible how many different ways there are to think about this question of, what is life?
And we've barely scratched the surface. There are so many other thinkers and perspectives out there just waiting to be explored.
So how do we make sense of it all? Where do we go from here? Wow, we've really covered a lot of ground. I feel like I'm seeing the world in a whole new way. But with all these different perspectives on life, it's hard to know, where to land.
That's exactly it, though. There isn't one right answer. It's the journey that really matters. The questioning, the exploring, finding those ideas that really speak to you.
So it's less about finding the right answer and more about figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, that's it. It's about creating your own personal philosophy of life, taking inspiration from these great thinkers and adapting their ideas to fit your own life and experiences.
I like that. So as we wrap up our deep dive, what are some key takeaways we can, actually apply to our lives?
Let's start with a voice that really calls for simplicity and getting back to nature. Henry David Thoreau. He believed in getting rid of all the unnecessary stuff and living deliberately, in tune with the natural world.
Thoreau, right, the Walden guy. I remember reading that back in high school. It seemed pretty radical back then.
His ideas were definitely countercultural, even for his time. He really challenged the whole materialistic mindset and was all about a simpler, more self-sufficient way of life.
It's funny how relevant that is today. We're constantly being told to buy more, do more, be more. It's so easy to forget what really matters.
Exactly. So it was slow down, appreciate the simple things, find peace in nature. He really pushes us to question our assumptions about what a good life is and to find fulfillment in experiences, not stuff.
It makes you think about how much time we waste chasing things that in the end don't really make us happy.
Now, let's compare that with a perspective that's all about the fun, joyful parts of life. Alan Watts.
Alan Watts, right. Didn't he talk a lot about Zen Buddhism?
Yeah. He was amazing at explaining Eastern philosophy to people in the West. He saw life as a dance, a game, something to be embraced with wonder and playfulness.
That sounds like a nice change of pace after all the serious stuff we've been talking about.
Watts reminds us not to take ourselves too seriously, to lighten up. He thought we should approach life with a sense of humor, remembering that ultimately we're all just a part of this big cosmic dance.
So it's about letting go a little and just enjoying the ride.
Exactly. Watts is all about letting go of those rigid beliefs and expectations and just embracing the present moment with curiosity and openness.
So we have Thoreau telling us to simplify and Watts telling us to play. Those are some pretty good starting points.
I think so too. Okay, let's shift gears again and talk about a thinker who found meaning even when faced with unimaginable suffering. Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor. I read his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Such a powerful book.
His story really shows the resilience of the human spirit. He believed that even in the darkest times, we can choose our attitude. We can find meaning in what we go through.
That's such a powerful message. It's not about pretending the suffering isn't there, but about finding a way to rise above it.
Exactly. Frankl believed that the most important thing for humans is to find meaning, and that search can keep us going even in the toughest situations.
It makes you wonder if we focus too much on happiness as, like, the goal. Maybe it's meaning that really gives our lives purpose.
That's a profound insight. Okay, now let's talk about a thinker who really emphasized freedom and defining yourself. Simone de Beauvoir.
Simone de Beauvoir, the feminist philosopher, right? She was a huge influence on the women's liberation movement.
Yet de Beauvoir really challenged those traditional gender roles. She argued that women, just like men, have the freedom to create their own identities, to decide their own future.
So it's about breaking free from what society expects of us and forging our own path.
Exactly. She believed we aren't defined by our biology or by what society tells us we should be. We have the power to choose who we want to be and to live authentically.
It's a good reminder that we all have the power to shape our own lives, no matter what circumstances we're born into. So as we wrap up, I want to go back to something you said earlier about there not being just one right answer to the question of what life is.
Absolutely. That's the great thing about this whole exploration. It opens up so many possibilities. We can see life through all these different lenses and find the ideas that really resonate with us.
It's like we've been given this toolbox full of different tools for living. We can pick and choose the ones that work for us and use them to build the life we want.
Exactly. And this is really just the beginning. There are so many other thinkers and perspectives out there to discover.
So, to everyone listening, as we finish our deep dive into what is life, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep searching for your own understanding of this big, complex idea. Which of these philosophies really resonated with you? What new insights did you gain? And what questions are you still thinking about?
Hold on to those questions. Keep searching for answers and keep living your life with intention and purpose. The journey of self-discovery never really ends.